of interfaces, right? That you can have one interface and you can have multiple classes implement. You will have multiple classes implementing the same interface, right? And you know what? This concept is very important because tomorrow, if a new driver comes up into the play, right? Today we have got Firefox driver, iDriver, right? Then we have got Safari driver, Android driver, and if a new driver comes up into the play, right? What happens is that uh, the functions, right? The set of features or functions available with each driver will remain same because each and every driver is implementing the same interface. Right, this is what we studied yesterday, and we also studied how we can dynamically change the browser. Right, that is right now the browser is Chrome, but if it is Mozilla or some other browser, how we can dynamically change it. Fine. So now what we'll do is we'll move further, right, and we'll see how to identify objects using Selenium. I'll include the jar files of Selenium in the project. So every time you have to include the jar files, okay, make sure you don't skip that. Fine. Now, all right. So if we talk about web components, right? For example, if I'm on any web page, say in rediff.com, right? Say I'm on this web page. So what all components are there on the page and how will Selenium identify the components? Okay, Selenium always works on the page source. If you right click on the page, you get the page source, right? And in the page source, you have the various tags, and each tag has got multiple attributes. Like for example, span is a tag, div is a tag. So these all are tag names. A tag starts with a conical bracket. Fine. And a tag has got various attributes like ID, class. These are the attributes to a tag. So Selenium goes in the page source and it actually works on the basis of these tags. Okay. So you know what? I'll make an Excel file. And in this Excel file, I'll show you what all components are there on the web page, right? And how do you work with it? Question being asked is, how do you define an attribute? Look, in the page source, every tag has an attribute. Like, for example, this is an anchor tag. It represents a link. It's got an attribute called href on click. So you don't define the attributes. The developer, he defines the attribute. Okay. So this is a div tag. It's got a class attribute. This is again a div tag. It's got a class attribute. Fine. This is an img tag. It's got a class attribute. So every web component has got an attribute associated with it. Fine. So let us define the web a tag and attribute associated with. So let us actually jot down in this Excel file the various web component, right? It's a tag name, right, and attributes. Yeah, ID, name, class, and all these are attributes. Okay. For example, what all, like I'll make a column like component tag name. Now there are a set of mandatory attributes and optional attributes. Hold on, you'll come to know in some time, right, what I am doing. Right. Now, what all components do you have on a web page? Right. On a web page, you can have a link, you can have a text box, right? You can have a checkbox, you can have a button, a radio button, right? Then you have a drop list, then you have a normal text on the page, right? Then you have, we will talk about this thing later on. You have got images, right? Okay, so that comes under drop list only, right? So these are the general components under a page, okay, generic ones, right? With which you deal. Now every component has a set of tag name, mandatory attributes, and optional attributes, right? For example, a link. A link will always start with the anchor tag A. Okay, in the page source, you will actually see that the link starts from the anchor tag. You know, in Firefox, the better way to analyze a page rather than going to page source is Firebug. Right? Just hold on, I'll tell you. Wait a minute. I need to upgrade the version of my Firefox. Just a minute. Because I'm using Firefox 3.5, which works with QTP. So just hold on, I'm upgrading the version of my Firefox. Alright, so you know what, you should get Firebug. You just go to Google and just type download Firebug. Yeah. Go to add-ons for Mozilla extensions and make sure that you open this in your Mozilla browser because Firefox it gets installed in Mozilla as an add-on, right? So you click on add to Firefox button over here and hold on, install and restart Firefox. So when you restart your Firefox, you'll see that you'll get this icon on the top, this one uh, over here, right? This is a Firebug icon. You click on this and Firebug will come up. Hold on, let me increase the font size in Firebug. Right. So in Firebug you have this arrow icon over here, this one, right? When you click on it and you move your mouse on the page, you get the code corresponding to that particular highlighted area. Right. For example, I move my mouse over this register link. So I get this is the register link. A link always starts with the anchor tag and has got an attribute called href which points towards the URL which opens when you click on the link. Okay, so a link is something which is having the tag name as A and the mandatory attribute is href. Href attribute will always be present with the link. It will point towards the URL which opens when you click on the link. Okay, now in case of Chrome, how do I inspect the elements on Chrome? Hold on. Alright. So suppose I am on Chrome and I go to the site facebook.com. Oh, hold on. Alright, and I want to investigate an element on Facebook. Right, you just right click on that element in Chrome and you select the option inspect element. This is known as a Chrome inspector. This is already present inside Chrome. You don't have to worry. In Chrome you will have the element highlighted over here, or it's very simple. You right click on the element and select inspect element. That element will be highlighted. In case of Firefox, you have to install Firebug and then you have to investigate with Firebug, right? In Chrome you can also hit F10 of your keyboard, and when you hit F10, hold on, just a minute, sorry, F12 of your keyboard. When you hit F12, the Chrome inspector will automatically come. Similar thing from I itself. If you hit F12 in I, you will have the I developer tool come up, in which you can investigate the page source. Okay, but generally the page source of the site remains same across all the browsers. Alright, so whatever is the page source in Firefox will also be there in Chrome and IE. Right, so again moving further on, if I look at a text box like this, okay, a text box will always have the tag name as input. A text box always has the tag name as input, and always remember, like from my experience I know that text box, checkbox, button, a radio button, all these have the tag names as input. Okay, but they differ in the mandatory attributes. In case of a text box, you will always find an attribute known as type whose value is equal to text. Okay, so in case of text box, the type attribute is always present and it's always equal to text. In case of a checkbox, right, is there a checkbox on this page? No. Uh, right. This is a checkbox. Okay. In case of checkbox, the type attribute is always equal to checkbox. The tag name is input. The tag name remains the same for various components. The type attribute differs. In case of a button, the type is equal to submit. In case of a radio button, type is equal to radio. So in case of text box, checkbox, in button, radio button, the tag name is always same input tag, but mandatory attributes they differ. Okay. In case of a drop list, right? For example, on this page, this is a drop list. Okay. Now in this drop list, this drop list has the select tag. Always remember all the drop lists will have the tag known as select. There is no mandatory attribute, not applicable. Okay, there is no mandatory attribute for a drop list. Okay, in case of a text, text can be present in a span, in a para tag, in normal div. There are various tags. Okay, text cannot be categorized into a single tag. Okay, it can be present into various tags. Okay, in case of an image, right? For example, this Google over here is an image. Right? Image always starts with the tag known as img. Okay, img is the tag for image, and there is a mandatory attribute known as source, which points towards the URL from which the image comes up. For example, this image is coming up from this URL. So I copy paste the URL, then you'll see the image over here. Okay, so this is the image coming up from that URL. An image has always got a tag, an attribute known as source. Source is the mandatory attribute in case of image. So all the web components, they have a certain tag name and a certain set of mandatory attributes. Right? Now there are some optional attributes as well. Optional attributes can be of the type like ID, class. Just a minute, guys. 1 minute. So these are the optional attributes like ID, class, name. These are generally uniquely used to define the objects. Now they can be present or they cannot be present. It's not that they will always be present with the object. Okay, but it's always a good thing for the developer to give these attributes along with the objects. For example, everybody must have heard the ID of the object should always be present. Okay? The developer should be good enough to give a unique ID to every object on the web page. Okay, if that is there, then you can uniquely identify the component on the web page. Okay, for example, the Gmail homepage. The developers they are quite smart. The input field over here has got an ID and also has got an email. Sorry, a name. Okay, so I can tell Selenium go and find the element on the page with the ID, email, or name email, whatever is the case. Right? It becomes very easy to identify the objects on the page. Okay, so now going further on, in day 4, I'll make a new class known as Gmail. Now in this we will open up a simple browser, right, and we will go to Gmail, enter the username password. Okay, so let's do a simple exercise. Like what I'll do is I'll write over here and I will go to Gmail. Right, protocol is very important. Do not miss the protocol. Right, now in Selenium, right, every object, every web component is technically known as a web element. Okay, question is being asked why this protocol is important, and that's how it's been made. They want the protocol HTTP or HTTPS, right? That's how Selenium has been made. Fine. Now, as I told you, everything in for Selenium is a web element. Don't confuse this with the web element in QTP. Okay, if you know QTP, then forget about it for some time. Right? For Selenium, this everything on the web page is a web element. This username is a web element, password is a web element, link is a web element, right? A button is a web element. Everything is a web element. Okay, and if you go to the website seleniumhq.org and go to the download section, you can go in the Java docs, and over here if you look at the WebDriver interface, okay, the question is being asked, if I put www.gmail, no, this will not work. Okay, please put the protocol. Okay, right. So in the WebDriver interface, you will have a function known as find element. Okay, you write over here driver dot, you will get the find element. This find element function is capable of finding any element, any web element on the page. Web element is an interface, right? Find element function returns you the reference of web element. In web element interface, you have got functions which can be performed with any web element, whether it is a text field, whether it is an input box, whether it is a link, right? So these are the generic functions like clear, click, get location, get size, get text is displayed, is enabled, right? So these are the functions which you can perform with any regular web component, like these regular web components. Okay, right? So driver.find element can find any element. You have to give the criteria in between, right? If you look at the find element function, it accepts the argument of by. By is another class which has got various mechanisms to locate elements within a page or a document. Okay, for example, it's by XPath, by tag name, by partial link text, by name, by link text, ID, CSS selector. So we'll be studying these, right? So what you need to do is you need to write driver.find element by which criteria, by dot ID. Okay, and we know that on the Gmail page, the ID of the username field is email. Fine. So you give the ID email. So what this will do is this will find the email input box on the web page. Okay, and return you reference of a web element. I'll call it username. Okay, so username is web element username is driver.find element by the ID email. Okay, in username what you can do with username you can fire all the functions which are there in the web element interface like click, clear, equals, and there's a function known as send keys. It is used to type in into the input box. For example, I write username dot send keys Ashish. So send keys function, it is used to type in into the input box. So if you run this, hold on. If you run this, this will go to Gmail and type in Ashish. Right. Similarly, you can take another web element called password, which will be equal to driver.find element by the ID, and you can supply the ID of the password field. Gmail guys, they are smart, they have given IDs to everything. So this is the ID of the password field. So password will be found, and you can write inside the password send keys some password. Okay, so when you run this, this will enter the username and password code. Alright, so everything on a web page is categorized into web element. You see that it's written, right? And in the web element, in the WebDriver interface, you have the function find element, which finds the web element inside the page. Okay, and web element is actually an interface in which you have the regular functions which can be performed on various elements on a web page. Okay. Now there is one thing, that is I have to okay, there is a question being asked. First I'll address that. No, there is another thing known as implicit waiting. I'll talk about that, Neil, later on. That will talk about what if the page is loading slowly, right? Um, yes, it is because of the G. The question being asked is, when you type in the password is not visible, right? It's coming as encrypted. It is because of the Gmail property. It's not because of your code. Okay. So now out here, uh, find element, right? So I have to move back and forth, and I have to go into the documentation again and again, right? So there is a way in which you can import the documentation of Selenium inside Eclipse, right? It's quite easy. This is the Javadoc link on which you click on when you open the documentation, right? Right click on the link and select the option copy link location. Okay, I'm going to import the Selenium documentation into Eclipse, right? So I'll talk about that, Anuj. I'll talk about that in the coming classes, right? So right click on the Java doc, copy the link location, right? And go to your project. In the libraries, hold on, yeah, you go to this jar file, Selenium Java 2.x.jar, okay, and expand this. You will see the option Java doc location, right? Edit this and paste the URL which you copied, and remove index.html from the end. Don't put index.html in the end. Fine. Click on OK. Again click on OK. That's it. Now the Java doc for Selenium is included in Eclipse. If I move my mouse over find element, I get the description of the function, the complete description. This comes from Java docs. Or if I write over here driver dot, you get the various functions, right? Suppose I go to the function get title, click on it. It describes what the function does, right? Or if I click on get, this will get an element from the page, right? Sorry, this will load a web page. So this will give you the description of the, right? Fine. So this is important because at times you will find it quite tough to move back and forth from the Java docs to your um, Eclipse, then from Eclipse to Java docs. It's good to include the Java docs inside your Eclipse. Fine. So this is how I use the username and password web edits, right? Now you know what? Instead of writing everything in 2 lines, you can also write everything in 1 line. I'll just comment this complete thing. Commenting means disabling the code, right? And I'll write here the same part, driver.find element by the email, by the ID email. Now this will be my web element, okay? This will be my web element, and in the end, if I put it, you will get all the options which are there with the web element. For example, I have to use send keys. What does send keys do? It does like use this method to simulate typing into an element which may set its value. Okay, so you can directly use send keys the username. Okay, and similarly for password, you can use dot send keys password. So you don't have to write 2 lines. The evaluation starts from the left hand side to the right hand side. First, this much is evaluated, and the element with the ID email is found, and inside it Ashish is there. Right. Similarly, if you have the sign in button, right? This is the sign in button. This is the ID of that button. Right, and you write here driver dot find element by the ID sign in button dot click. Okay, so this will click on the sign in button as well. Right, I'll talk about everything, sir. Sabya, I'll talk about it. Right, let's go step by step. Now there are various things which come into mind out here, like what if element is not present? What if the element with ID email is not present, right? Or what if there are multiple elements with same ID are there? That is, we just saw that email was just one element, right? There was just one element on the web page with ID email. But what if there are multiple elements with the same ID? Okay, right? So all these things, and one more thing, like what Sabir was saying, that how do we do verification using Selenium? Suppose I have to verify. Look, that thing will come under testing. Okay, I'm not talking about testing right now. For the next 10 to 12 classes, I will not talk about testing. I'll just talk about Selenium and its features. Then we will move over to TestNG or JUnit frameworks. Right? TestNG or JUnit frameworks, they actually help us to uh, testing. Right? I'll tell you. Hold on. I'll tell you. Wait. You should not confuse Selenium with verification and report building. Look, suppose what happens practically is that these will be your Selenium scripts. Okay. Now Selenium is a tool which interacts with the browser. Okay. It will not do the validations. It can pick a value from a browser. It can pull out a value. It can set the value. Right. It can load your pages and all everything. But it is not something with which you can generate your reports, or while running the scripts you want that the data should be read from Excel files. So Selenium has not got any feature for reading data from Excel files. So we have to write the code separately, right? And for example, we have to parameterize the data from Excel file. That means we have to run a test case multiple times. How do we do that? Then we have to generate reports, right? These reports are generally HTML reports. Now Selenium will not do that. Okay, these are my Selenium scripts: script 1, script 2, script 3, into which I have to feed the data. Right, I have to feed the data from Excel file, generate reports and all everything. Uh, Hold on, I repeated this 2 times. Reports. Just a minute. I'll remove this one and I'll put something known as logs. We have to generate logs as well. That is, if the script is running for say 10 hours, You want to know what happened at each and every minute, right? So Selenium will not do all these things, right? For doing all these things, we bring in a controller in between. This controller is known as testng or JUnit, or it is also sometimes people use as something known as cucumber, or then use fitness, right? So it depends. Okay, you can use any of the framework. The work of these frameworks is to do the coordination activity, right? These frameworks will read the data from the Excel file. They will call the scripts. Okay, the frameworks will call the scripts in a particular order. Okay, you also want that the script should be executed in a particular order. These frameworks will then generate the reports, generate the logs and all everything, right? So right now our main motive is to learn how to generate the scripts. Okay, then we will learn about these frameworks and we will put together everything and build a framework in that. Okay, right. NUnit is for C#. It's not for Java. NUnit is for C#. Okay, so this is the very basic stuff, right? What I have taught you. Now, what if element is not present on the page, right? Suppose I gave a wrong ID. I was talking about these two problems, right? What if the element is not present on the page, or if what if multiple elements have the same ID, right? If I'm running the script now, yes, an exception will come up. You'll see that you get an exception known as no such element exception, right? So you will get an error. Obviously, now there are various things with which you can do. You can tell Selenium that don't. The error out here was instant. You want Selenium to wait for some time, find the element, and then throw an error. So you can do all those things. Yes, it can be used in the same way. Fine. Or if there are multiple elements on the page with same ID. Now suppose there is one element on the page at this location, and there's another element on the page on the at this location. Both have the same IDs. Which one will Selenium pick? Okay. Now suppose Selenium always scans the page from the top left to the bottom. It goes like this. Okay, it goes like this. Fine. So it will find element function will actually go forward and find the first occurrence of the element. It will not find this one. Okay. If you look at the find element function, that says that it finds the first web element using the given method. So if there are multiple elements on the page with the same ID, then the one which is found first will be used. But what if you have to use the second one, right? There are other functions for that, and we will discuss that, right? It's actually 9 o'clock in the morning here now, and I have to leave.